bring discord to harmony, bring chaos to cosmos. The Piper is written and directed by Elinger Thoroddsen. If I mispronounce that name, I do apologize. He's familiar with the horror genre with projects like Patient 7, Rift, and Child Eater. That was the alternate name for that Hall Notes classic. If you know the song, I love you guys. And this stars Charlotte Hope, who was in The Nun. She plays Sister Victoria. I know it's pronounced The Nun. I know I saw The Nun, so much so that I bought The Nun, even though, really, honestly, outside of the atmosphere, The Nun wasn't all that great. But yeah, Charlotte Hope was in that, and she plays Mel, a composer that is bound and determined to honor her late mentor, Catherine. Not Catherine the Great, no, horse stomping down on her, not even a ghost horse. Mourn the pity. Catherine met an unfortunate end that we see in the beginning of the film, so Mel decides, I'm going to finish her composition with my own, with blackjack and hookers. But let's just say, when she finds this particular movement, which, is a bit of an ancient European folklore piece centered around some dark, spooky stuff and something called the Piper. You probably can figure out what the fuck the actual theme is. If you can't, maybe the movie will hit you over the head a few times, or maybe you need to read up on your goddamn folklore, or maybe just know what the Piper and music have to do with each other. That being said, Mel has a daughter that has some deafness. She's her name is Zoe. That's the character name, by the way. And she also wants to be a musician, but sometimes you have to be able to hear the music, even though, various composers throughout history have not been able to. Some people said that Beethoven couldn't be a good composer, but did he listen? That's a dick thing, but I don't care. It's an old joke. So Mel finds a way to get a hold of this particular piece, but there's a certain piece missing, so she is bound, determined to finish this whole thing and honor her mentor. But yeah, scary stuff starts to happen, and from there, people get haunted by music, and get haunted by a piper in a movie called The Piper. It's about the Pied Piper, just in case you didn't quite get that, just in case I wasn't hitting you over the head metaphorically. I believe that's what the term is. In case you didn't get that, that's basically what it is. So yeah, it has to do with the Pied Piper, and I will say a few positives about the movie. One, the acting is fine. Charlotte Hope is fine in her role. There is a character, Nancy, played by Kate Nichols, who is quite lovely, I do want to say, and she has a son that plays with Zoe, a son named Colin, and then there are a few other people. There's the composer, Gustafsson, who's played by Julian Sands, and let's just say, unfortunately, this is one of the last movies that he did. Is then he went on a hike in the San Bernardino Mountains, or in the region, and unfortunately, he was found 5 months later. And spoiler, he was not found alive. So rest in peace, Mr. Julian. So yeah, we love a fun fact, I guess. But then there's this one guy, Franklin. That Franklin, my dear, I want to be the lead, flute player, and obviously flute playing in a movie called The Piper. Do you get it yet? And from there, basically, we get the usual hauntings. We get a bit of story building, and then we get some jump scares. We get some stuff happening with the kids. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, while this movie wasn't all that bad, there were some good atmospheric shots and some good shots in the concert hall, especially some good composition pieces, and some good body horror effects. Especially once it got to around the, not even halfway point, we're probably about 2/3 in, I'm like, oh no, now it's super goofy. And the low budget doesn't necessarily take away from that, because you can do a low budget movie, but this kind of fell back on familiar tropes, and unfortunately did become a little bit too goofy to get anything more than a passing recommendation. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. I did pay about $7 to watch it on Amazon, because that unfortunately is the only streaming service as of this moment that it's available on. But that being said, it was worth it. It was worth it because I got to see a few cool shots and a little bit of decent storyline building. But yeah, not necessarily great. There were elements of, good in it, and it just takes a little bit too long to get to the point where I think that, maybe cutting a couple scenes and maybe just getting to the meat of the matter might have worked out better, because these characters just kind of go off the rail on a crazy train, and some of it works, some of it doesn't work. Special effects are alright. Body horror effects are pretty good, but it has a conclusion that is very obvious, and it is what it is. It's not a bad movie. It's inoffensive. Has a few decent moments, so I look forward to seeing what else the director-writer can do, and the cast does fine for what they, for what they offer. That being said, I am going to be getting into spoilers. It's on Amazon for a bit. Probably on a streaming service anytime now after I post this review. But that being said, getting into spoilers, 3, 2, 1, spoilers! So, Catherine, the not-so-great, gets demolished and set on fire after she tries to set fire to this, container that has all this noted music where, yeah, let's just say it's all evil, and this entity shows up. The Pied Piper, by the way, just so you know. Again, just in case you didn't get it. And I did kind of find it funny how the entity just kind of appears in the woods, like off in the distance. And then suddenly she falls into the box that's on fire, and she's on fire, and she dies. And it's not even been a week, and they're still going on with the whole goddamn concerto thing. Her daughter being deaf, I thought might have, without hearing aids, rather, I thought might have actually played into the movie a little bit more. It kind of really doesn't. So we basically just get the characters, not plotting along, but a little bit of story building. We get a nice scene between Mel and Zoe where they're doing the water cup music trick. And she ends up going to Catherine's place, Mel that is, and her sister is pissed, saying, "Oh, you want to come around now?" And I said, "I don't want this composition to be shown. This concerto cannot be shown. It cannot be heard." Gustafson is bound, determined to make it happen. Franklin is determined to make the head flute player. And then we get a little bit more, back and forth between them. And the concerto for children, basically, again, Pied Piper, Pied Piper's son stole a pig and away he went. The Pied Piper leading the rats out. But after he met an unfortunate end, his music would haunt the children. This was his curse. And she decides to write the third movement of her on her own. She's going to make it, after all. This does not look like flute playing. I apologize. So, there's a talk with, a couple other characters. One that dives into more of the lore of music. Music can drive people mad. It can evoke a lot of emotions. And then there's that thing in Latin from the beginning, bring discord to harmony, bring chaos to cosmos. Sounds like an H.P. Lovecraft thing, but without the racism. And she brings the recording back to her house. And Zoe's friend Colin ends up listening to it, and let's just say he becomes possessed by the music. The music basically haunts him and everything. There was a point where they played some hide and seek with it looked like a medicine ball. It was actually, I think, a kickball volleyball. And then, yeah, the entity ends up possessing Colin. I mean, kind of in a bit of a goofy way. He's doing the weird whistling, and he disappears because the Pied Piper is going to take care of the children. And the Pied Piper of Hamelin, however the hell you say that. I did kind of find it funny that there was one scene a little bit earlier where Franklin was playing the composition and he passed out. I called him Fainting Franklin, and then I couldn't take it seriously. But then they showed the glowing eyes and everything, and I know what they were trying to do, but I'm like, oh no, it's goofy. But that's alright, it is what it is. There were lots of children that died in various tragedies, almost like the Pied Piper is bound, determined to kill all children. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. The Pied Piper wouldn't be the first to go after that. Maybe he put, the dogs in the enclosed pool area and the side garage door was left open. If you get it, you get it. And I don't know, there was this one scene that kind of just made me laugh where Zoe goes on this bus chasing after this ball. And she ends up on this broken down bus in the schoolyard that may or may not actually be there, and she may just be seeing these things. But then broken glass everywhere, as a rap song once said. I'm not going to say by who, because they're under a lot of investigations for a lot of shit. But the recording continues to haunt people. There's one character eventually stabs his own ear out because he just can't take the music anymore. I don't know why that made me laugh. But Mel gets possessed. Goofy, glowing eyes. Various things happen. It takes a while to get to the obvious conclusion. There's a demonic voice in this recording. All this crazy stuff's happening. Zoe senses that something is wrong with Mel, tries to get her to stop doing this thing. The sister tries to get Mel to stop this. It took 50 years, but the music eventually killed her sister. All this crazy shit is going on. And then there's like a fairly good scene with the concert taking place where this concerto for children is being played. And there's some great shots of the crowd, obviously being under the spell of this. Gustafson's nose is bleeding. Franklin's just going insane with his glowing, goofy eyes. And that's pretty... Even with the glowing, goofy-eyed goofiness, there's actually some good stuff to it. There's actually some great shots here. Sweeping shots, rounding around and stuff like that. I actually appreciate that. I appreciate that stuff. But a little bit earlier, we had a hide-and-seek game with Colin that actually wasn't that, and Zoe was getting attacked. And a little bit earlier, she, like... The first game of hide-and-seek she played with Colin was she was hiding in this little, like, under the floor area where it was, like, almost like a little sewer or a little hidey hole. Now, the Pied Piper ends up playing the music. He gets out of this box, and then it comes out of a box, immediately gets over. If you get that, I also love you guys. He leads the children into this weird snowy landscape that probably sounded a lot better. And then it ended up in execution because, oh boy! And look, I'm sorry, but maybe don't do some shots if they can't look like they were not done on Windows, Explorer. But nevertheless, or Internet Explorer. Then, because obviously the Pied Piper led the rats away, Zoe gets rescued, and her and Mel play music to basically summon the rats out of the Pied Piper's mouth, and then they consume him, and that's it. That's absolutely it. That's it. We don't go to 3 months later where it turns out Zoe's actually still possessed by the Pied Piper. Oh, wait, we do. We do. We do. Look, there were some good body horror effects, including the Pied Piper coming out of Franklin. Actually, that was probably one of the best scenes in the goddamn movie. And there were decent elements here. It gets a C+ because it was what it was, but it was a little bit silly, and not silly in like an entertaining way, silly like, oh no. But nevertheless, was what it was. Certainly not the worst thing I've seen this year, not even by a long shot. Agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Reckland. I'll see you soon.